Hi, everybody. Welcome. Good evening, good afternoon. So, from wherever part of the world you are seeing from, welcome everyone to today's session, which will be focusing on how European training providers are building an industry-focused AI workforce with AI certs. So, my name is 𝗂𝗍𝗍𝗀. I am the brand lead of AI certs, and I am your moderator for today's session. So, I'll be behind the scenes when we start monitoring your questions that you might have throughout the session. And for our speaker today serves as a general manager for Europe, Middle East, and African regions. He is James Walla. So, welcome, James, and over to you to get started.
Thanks, Cash, and thanks everyone for giving me your time this afternoon. Hope you gain both value from the session and insight into how partnering with AI certs can position your company for the corporate AI adoption boom, which is currently taking place all over the world. This session was, of course, designed and will be speaking to those of you who operate training businesses or deliver educational services to clients in Europe. I can see that we've got several attendees from outside of Europe, and the basis of what I'll be covering is universal, albeit with some different numbers. So even if you're not operating in Europe, this session is still highly relevant for you. So let me tell you how I was inspired to make the start of this presentation, because it started more or less by accident. So I live just outside of Copenhagen in Denmark, and a few weeks ago I had the news on in the evening, and a segment came on about how Danish workplaces are actually using AI, and there was a number in the segment that made me sit up. And I'll show you that number in a moment, but it nagged at me enough that I pulled the actual study the next morning, and then I started asking whether this was just a Danish thing or whether it was representative across Europe. It turned out it is. And the further I dug, the clearer it got that this isn't really a story about AI at all. It's a story about a gap, and the gap lands squarely in your world as training providers. As we proceed with this session, drop any questions that you have in the chat whenever you think of something. Akash is watching it, and we'll get to them at the end. I envisage spending roughly 30 minutes on the facilitated part of this session, and then if we have time or if there are any questions afterwards, we've got some time for that. So let's get into it. So this session really, and an honest read on it, and where AI adoption and the skills gap actually sit across Europe. What that means specifically for training providers like you, and it runs, as I said, for about 30 to 40 minutes. What this isn't is a product demo. There's not a sales pitch in disguise, and it's not a generic AI is going to change everything type of keynote. And it isn't a commitment to anything beyond listening at that point. However, what I'm going to talk about does point to the value that AI certs has within the AI adoption landscape, but I'm going to get to that at the end, when hopefully, if I've done a good enough job, you'll be able to connect the dots and start thinking about how all of this fits into the conversations you're having with your customers. Having said all of this, the research and the thinking earn their place on their own. So if you take nothing else, you'll leave with a sharper read on your own market than when you arrived. So that's the deal, and I think it's worth staying for. So let me tell you what triggered me into building this session. So as I said, I was watching a news segment, and this is the study behind that news segment, which comes out of Copenhagen Business School, which is one of the premier business schools in Europe. It holds a Triple Crown accreditation, which only 1% of business schools in the world have. So that's their credibility. And the study is properly representative. There were several thousand people cut by a level of seniority. And that last part is what makes this study sing. So if you look at the gap there, 70% of leaders are using AI in their job, but only 32% of employees are. That's a 38-point gap between the people setting the direction and the people actually doing the work. And the number that made me sit up is just that 1 in 10 employees has had any formal training in how to use AI. So the picture of what this means on the ground is that the boss and the leaders, they're all in. The team is half in, and almost nobody has been taught a thing. So people are learning AI by copying whoever sits nearest and hoping for the best. And the same study found that 84% of companies have no AI strategy at all. and nearly 4 in 10 employees don't even know whether their company has a strategy. And that is the textbook definition, which is leading to shadow AI. And we'll come back to that in a few minutes, because it's why this has stopped only being a learning and development conversation and started being a CISO, or Chief Information Security Officer, conversation. The risk isn't that people aren't adopting AI, it's how they're adopting it, how they're using it, which tools they're using, and have they been mandated by the company? AI only works off of data. So if people are pumping company data into non-mandated tools, that is essentially the same as opening the door to the company's headquarters and having an open day for the public. Now, my first thought when I dug into all of this is probably your first thought too. Fine, but this is Denmark. It's very small. So I did some thorough research on the landscape in Europe, and here is what I found. Denmark isn't behind on AI. On the European Commission's own figures, it's the most AI mature economy in the EU, with 42% of companies using AI, which is the highest share anywhere in the European Union. So when I show you a gap in Denmark, I'm showing you the gap in the best prepared country, not the worst. And the worker numbers line up almost exactly. The Commission's research centre surveyed 70,000 workers across all 27 member states and found that 30% of EU workers now use AI at work. So this is roughly the same. Denmark's employee figure was 32%. So in other words, Danish employees are bang on the European average. So it's not a local story. The UK, which is of course outside of the EU now, is on the same curve. Around a quarter of UK businesses now use AI, which is just under the European average. And when you start asking what's holding the rest back, the answer that keeps coming up isn't the technology, it's the skills. Every market in Europe is somewhere on this line. Adoption is climbing fast, training is flat, and the constraint everywhere is capability rather than access. Now, before we go any further, a quick word on who I am, and then we can really get into what all of this means. As Akash mentioned, I'm James. I serve as the General Manager for EMEA at SADA, which is the parent company of AI Certs, and our other brands, which are all connected to AI skilling, capability, corporate AI adoption, and governance. I've spent over 25 years in professional education and certification in senior global roles, from training companies to certification bodies. I've done policy work in the EU and a former partner in a Danish AI transformation company, which I exited from earlier this year. I've worked in the AI and emerging technology space for 8 years, and the last 2 years properly in the rabbit hole of AI. I've traveled the world when invited to speak at conferences about human-centered AI and the importance of focusing on how humans collaborate with this technology. I also sit on the Credentials and Standards Board of the International Coaching Federation. And I mention this because it's the reason I care so much about what makes a certification actually worth something, as opposed to a certificate you print out and forget. That distinction turns out to be the whole game here, and we'll come back to it. Right, now let me get us back to the problem, because this is where it starts to get interesting. We keep calling this a skills gap, and it is one, but I don't think that is the whole story. And the part it misses is the part that bites. So here's the trap. With most skills gaps, you can see them. Someone hasn't done the training, they can't do the task, and it shows. This one doesn't show. The tools are everywhere, and there's no friction with regards to access. So every single leadership person looks and says the same thing. Adoption is healthy, we're all good. But usage is not competence. People are deep in these tools and still can't apply them with judgment, safely, or to the standard their role actually demands. The gap is real. It's just hidden underneath all that activity. And a problem you can't see is a problem nobody is funding to fix. And you can't sell, as a training provider, a solution to a problem that the buyer doesn't believe they have. So part of your job and part of the value you bring is helping the customer see the gap they're currently celebrating as a success. And we'll come back to how you do that. So here's where it gets very interesting, because this gap doesn't open one opportunity, it opens two. And they speak to two completely different people inside your customer. The first is governance. When people are using AI without training, the organization is carrying risk it hasn't counted. Data going into tools it shouldn't. Decisions getting made on outputs nobody checked. And in Europe specifically, AI literacy isn't just good practice anymore, it's becoming an expectation under the EU AI Act. So there's a whole conversation here with the risk and compliance side of the house, the people who don't normally buy the training, but who need to have structured AI readiness as a governance control. For most of you, that persona is a brand new buyer. The second is performance. Even where AI is being used perfectly safely, shallow capability means shallow results. People are getting the obvious 20% out of these tools and missing all of the rest. The organization that turns adoption into genuine role-level capability separates itself from the company that just hands out licenses and hope. That's the conversation with the business leaders, the ones chasing competitive advantage. So it's the same gap, but there are two doors to walk through, one marked as risk and one marked as advantage. And a provider who can work through both is selling into a much bigger room than one who only sells to L&D or the IT department. So keep that in your head because it quietly changes who you should be pitching to. So let me make the risk side quite concrete here because abstract risk doesn't sell. Specific risk sells. Four things are showing up right now on the desks of the people you sell to. There's governance risk, where AI use is expanding faster than the rules and the oversight. So leaders honestly don't know what their people are doing with these tools. Data security exposure is second on the list, where employees are pasting things into AI models with no idea what's safe. And that isn't a tooling problem, it's a training problem. Then there's role performance inconsistencies, where two people in the same job get wildly different results from the same AI because one has been shown how to collaborate with it and the other one is still guessing. And then there is competitive drag, which is the quiet one, which nobody notices at first. This is where the company looks busy and modern on AI, while the capability gap widens underneath, and then it shows up 18 months later in numbers nobody can quite explain. Now, here's the move for you. Every one of those is a live, painful, board-level worry that your customer already has. You don't need to manufacture demand. You need to connect what you sell to a problem that's already keeping someone awake at night. The providers who win this are the ones who walk in talking about that list, not about their course catalog, which brings me to a question I genuinely want your answer to in a moment. Before that, I want to put a sharper point on the governance side, because this is the bit that tends to wake a room up. Go back to that gap for a second. Far more people are using AI than have ever been trained to use it. So what does an untrained person do when they want a tool in their company, when they want a tool that their company hasn't given access to? They use their own account, their personal ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or other tools, all on company work. And Netscope tracked this across millions of users, and the numbers are stark. Nearly half of everyone using AI at work, so that's 47%, is doing it through personal accounts that the company can't see or control. The volume of sensitive data going into these tools doubled in a single year, and shadow AI is now tangled up in 6 out of 10 insider data incidents. So here's the uncomfortable part. As the models get better and people lean on them harder, that exposure climbs with them. It doesn't settle down. But look at what's actually leaking. It's source code, regulated data, customer and health records, intellectual property, passwords sitting in pasted configuration files, all of it walking out through tools nobody signed off on. So here's the line I'd give you to carry into a customer. A CISO should be every bit as worried about untrained people using AI badly as the CEO is excited about using it at all. And banning the tools doesn't work. People just get better at hiding it. The only thing that genuinely reduces the risk is teaching people to use AI properly, which is to say training, mindset, and behavior changes. That makes training the cheapest security control on the table. And it's a very, very different conversation to walk into than would you like some AI courses. It opens a door to a buyer most training providers never even get near. So let's talk about the tick box, one size fits all AI sessions, the generic AI awareness training, because there's a lot of it about, and I want to be fair to these types of sessions before I take them apart. It does some real things. It introduces the AI vocabulary so people stop being frightened of the words. It builds a bit of broad familiarity, and it signals to the workforce that leadership is taking this seriously, which has value on its own. So if you sell awareness, generic awareness courses, I'm not telling you to stop. It does open doors, but be honest with yourself about what it doesn't do. It doesn't build capability in a specific job. The marketeer still doesn't actually know how to use AI as a marketeer. It doesn't validate anything. There's no portable proof the person can do the thing. They just have a completion record. And it goes stale very fast because a course written 6 months ago is describing tools that have probably changed twice since then. And the big one, it gives the enterprise buyer no real confidence that their workforce is ready, because attendance isn't competence and everyone in the room knows it. So awareness training opens the door. However, it can't close the gap. And the reason that distinction matters so much commercially is what's happening to the market because of it, which is honestly the most important part of this whole talk. So the AI training market is splitting cleanly in two. And that split's happening faster than most training providers have clocked onto. On one side, you've got the awareness-led market, generic literacy workshops sold on completion numbers and easy to launch. Easy to launch is exactly the problem, because easy to launch means easy to copy. Everyone is piling in. The content is roughly the same wherever you buy it, so the only thing left to compete on is price. That market is commoditizing right in front of us, and the margins are heading only one way. On the other side, you've got capability-led market, role-based pathways tied to actual jobs. This means validation through recognized certification. So there's real proof at the end. It's harder to build, and that's the good news, because harder to build is harder to copy and easier to defend. The buyer can see the difference, so the pricing holds up, and it positions you as a serious provider rather than the cheap one. Here's the uncomfortable bit. Right now, most providers are drifting by default into that first market because it's the easiest sale this quarter. And every month you spend competing on awareness is a month you're not building the position that actually defends your business. The capability market is being built right now, this year, and the people building it are the ones who'll own it. So the real question isn't whether the market is splitting, it's which side of the split your business is going to be standing on. And let me show you what it actually takes to stand on the right side. So if capability is the category that wins, then you need to know what a capability offer is actually made of, because it's a lot more than good content. There are 5 layers, and the defensibility comes from having all of them, not from any single one. The first is role-based certifications mapped to real job functions, not generic modules. The second, a vendor-aligned curriculum that stays relevant as the tools shift underneath it, because a static course is a depreciating asset from the day it's written. The third, credible certification and verification. So there's real checkable proof at the end and not just an attendance certificate. The fourth, standardized delivery and assessment. So you get the same outcome, whether it's delivered in Lisbon, Berlin, London, or Riyadh, which is the thing that lets you scale without quality falling apart. And the fifth, partnering, partner enablement and go-to-market support, so that growing the business doesn't mean rebuilding the whole machine every single time. So notice what I'm saying here. Defensibility comes from infrastructure, not just content. Anyone can write a good course these days. Very few people can stand all 5 of these up, and that's precisely why the ones who do stand this up get to charge the proper rates and sleep at night. Now, building all 5 from scratch is a multi-year, genuinely expensive job. Most training providers can't justify it, And honestly, they shouldn't try, which is the obvious place for me to show you where AI Certs fits into all of this. So this is the commercial bit, and I'm going to be straight with you rather than dress it up. The thing I want you to take away is this. We're not asking you to step in front of your customer. The relationship stays yours. The market trust you've built is yours. Your positioning in your vertical, your commercial strategy, the way you deliver, all of that stays exactly where it is with you. That's the part that's genuinely hard to build, and you've already built it. What we bring is the infrastructure underneath, the 5 layers we just walked through, so you don't have to build them yourself. Over 70 role-based certifications already mapped to jobs and job roles. A curriculum that we keep current so you're not maintaining it. Proctored certification and digital blockchain verification of credentials, which is your credibility layer. There's train the trainer support, a partner portal, courseware, learner analytics, all the delivery machinery, and co-branded go-to-market support so you're not marketing from a standing start. The line I'd ask you to remember is the one at the bottom. You keep the relationship and we strengthen the offer. This isn't a franchise where you vanish behind our brand. It's a way to walk into your customer with a capability-led proposition you couldn't otherwise afford to build tomorrow. That's the whole pitch, and it really is the whole pitch. But let me place us on the map, because the first question any of you will be asking is, how is this actually different from what I already sell, or from the nearly free certifications the hyperscalers are pushing? And here's the honest answer. On the left side, the established names, the 𝗵cia, 𝗊𝗍, and the like, brilliant brands, broad IT coverage, and some of them you might already sell. But they weren't built AI native. They aren't role specific, and they move slowly, which is fatal in a field that shifts every few weeks. On the right, you've got the hyperscalers, Microsoft, AWS, Google, strong, deep certifications, but locked to their own stack and built around the product rather than the person's job. We sit deliberately in the middle, vendor aligned so the content stays current, role focused so it maps to the actual job, and independently proctored and credentialed so the proof holds up when an employer checks it. The middle ground is the bit nobody else is occupying cleanly, and it's exactly the bit your enterprise customers are asking for. And when I say role-based, I mean it literally, because this is the bit that separates a real capability offer from a generic AI awareness course. Pick any function in your customer's business: the boardroom, finance, marketing, HR, engineering, security, customer service. There is a certification and a learning path mapped to that role. So when you walk into a customer and they say, we need our finance team to be AI ready, or our customer service people are all using AI and we've got no idea if they're any good at it, you have a specific validated answer for that exact role, not a one-size-fits-all workshop. The question I'd have you put to a customer is the one along the top. Which roles in your business need to become AI ready? The moment they start naming roles, you stopped selling a course and started solving a capability problem, function by function. That's a far stronger commercial position to be in, and it's only possible because the portfolio goes that deep. So the learner experience is something we've spent a lot of effort on refining. We believe that there is no preferred way of consuming training. People have different preferences, different amounts of time to learn, but this shouldn't be a blocker to access to knowledge. And it should be a preference that each individual learner can make with the least bit of friction possible. That's why with AI Certs, your learners can attend ILT training with you if they prefer that, but they can also take advantage of video-based learning, audio books, podcasts, and have access to an AI mentor that supports them throughout the course. A truly immersive experience wherever you prefer or can learn. And as a partner, the important aspect for you from your vendor is that the content is of high quality and regularly updated, especially AI content. The exams, as I said before, have to be credible and test the knowledge that students have learned during their learning exams are developed following a thorough process which is aligned with international standards organization, including job task analysis processes and psychometrics. And as you launch and scale, you'll have the support you need to position these products via our go-to-market motion. We have a dedicated team which takes you through onboarding and enablement for your sales and marketing teams. We've got co-branded assets built, a partner portal for you to access all of the latest information and provide you with an overview of your learner enrollments, as well as train the trainer support for those of you running instructor-led training. So you get access to market and sell over 70 certification programs with only one modest upfront investment, which acts as a credit for your future purchases. So we've got different types of partners in our ecosystem, and we cater to all of them depending on the type of organization you are and the audience that you have. For those selling to businesses, our authorized training partner program is where you will enter. For those in the academic or workforce development space, we've got an academic alliance partner program. For those who are member-based associations, we cater to your audience through you to add value to support the value that you provide to your members. And for those of you who deliver core services where AI Certs represents an add-on opportunity, we have an affiliate program built just for you. So regardless of the type of organization you are, we've got you covered. So let me land the plane here. The market is moving from awareness to capability. That move is happening this year, not in some comfortable distant future. And the providers who move with it early are the ones who set the price rather than chase it. The gap that Danish number at the beginning pointed to is real. It's large and it's sitting inside the customers you already have relationships with today. So what I'm offering you isn't a contract, it's a conversation. 30 minutes where we hold your portfolio up against what we've watched work and what we've watched fail. And we work out honestly whether there is a fit worth building. No slides, no pitch, because I've already done the pitch today. So if that's useful, there's a link in the chat now. I think Akash is going to post that, or just reply to the follow-up email and we'll get that set up. And everyone who joined today hears from me personally this week, whatever you answered and whatever questions you've got. So thank you for the time. It's genuinely appreciated. And let's see, Akash, if we've got any questions in the audience. Well, thank you very much for today, and have a pleasant rest of your days. Thank you.